Everyone changes after they actually win.
Nation's top lottery attorney, Kurt Panouses. You've helped countless lottery winners.
This is big money. This is multi-generational.
Top 3 things a lottery winner needs to do as soon as they win.
There's no do-overs. It's a one-time deal. Either you get it right or you get it wrong.
If I won the lottery, I want to make sure I stay anonymous. Are you my guy to make this happen?
People call me up and they'll say, hey, did you represent that person that won? If you know their name, they're probably not my client.
Do you ever get someone who's in the middle of a divorce and they say, I won the lottery?
The husband says, well, my money was used to buy the ticket. And the wife goes, well, I picked the numbers. The question was, if I won during that time period, is it mine or is it ours?
For your clients, what is the hardest part about winning millions and millions of dollars? Kurt Panouses, thank you so much for joining me for the BW Report. I want to dive right into the best tips. We always talk about what people should do first. Let's talk about what someone shouldn't do immediately after winning. Go ahead.
Sure. And I think the most important thing for someone would be to secure the ticket. This ticket is really necessary for the claim. It's part of the whole process. It's really the centerpiece of the whole process. So you want to make sure that you put the ticket in a safe place. Make a copy of the front and the back of the ticket. My suggestion is never to mark or put your name on the ticket until you talk to someone, but just make a copy of the front and the back of the ticket. Take a selfie. I would suggest just put the ticket in a safe deposit box at a bank.
And Kurt, we had a video that you and I did a couple months ago. It went viral, almost 2 million views, best tips, best tricks for the lottery. And the advice was remarkable. When you did mention that, don't sign the back of the ticket, that was news to a lot of people who thought, traditionally you sign the back of the ticket, it means you owned it. Why do you recommend people not to sign the back of the ticket?
Well, first off, if you look at every single, not every once in a while, but if you look at every single lottery website, they are going to tell you to sign your name to the back of the ticket. And of course, they say that with a good reason because you don't want to lose the ticket. If the ticket is lost, again, you want to have your name associated with it. Although I've had a couple situations, I have something going on right now where someone actually put their name on the ticket and the ticket got lost and or stolen, where it depends on who you talk to. And the person marked out their name, put their name on top. And of course, we're dealing with that situation, so it's not cut and dry. So again, from my perspective, I want to paint the picture that we need to paint for the client. And we don't know what that is until after the client wins, when we know the rules, the dollar amount for the client. So again, I want to get as much information from the client before we start painting the picture on the back of the ticket. And that could be putting the client's name, putting my name on as a trustee, setting up an LLC that we create, putting a trust name on the back of it. There's so many things that we could do with that ticket. And I want to find out what the client wants to do first. So I say, just put the ticket in a safe place. Let's make a decision, make sure we're comfortable with that decision, and then go forward.
Absolutely. And there's a few things that you mentioned really important there. A lot of this has to go with the claiming process. It has to do with keeping them anonymous. It goes with that plan. You're talking about setting up the LLC and the trust and the way you're able to share money with family members that you love. It touches on all of those things, and we're going to dive into all of that. But first, I tell my viewers this all the time. If you like, if you subscribe, if you comment, I have access to Kurt. And Kurt, you've heard from me quite a bit. I'm saying, hey, this viewer wanted to know this. If you guys do those things and you ask your questions in the comments, I'll try to get as many of them answered as possible from the nation's top lottery attorney, Kurt Panouses. But let's go ahead and start off. I'm going to act as if I was a lottery winner, which I hope one day actually happens. But I'm going to act as if I was, just to give our viewers an idea of what a phone call sounds like with you after they won, okay? All right, here we go. So I'm dialing Kurt. Hey, Kurt. I heard about you on Google. I saw your interviews you did on YouTube. You're not going to believe this. I just won the lottery, and I'm trying to weigh in all my options. What do I do right now? I'm freaked out.
Okay. Well, certainly congratulations. That's obviously the number one comment from my perspective. But the first thing I'm going to ask the person is, tell me about yourself. Tell me Are you married? Do you have children? How old are they? Do you live on your own? Do you live with your parents? Give me that basic information about your situation. Tell me if you're a U.S. citizen, do you have a social security number, a green card of some sort? All those factors have to come into play. And I want to know who the client is, first off, okay? Secondly, what I'm going to ask the client is, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in the next 24 hours helping you before we get an engagement letter set up. In other words, I don't know what to even tell you that we're going to do or that I'm going to charge you or anything like that until I get some basic information and check the law out in your state. So again, I'm going to say, what state are you playing in? Obviously, we're talking about the Powerball today. We're talking about a little over $1 billion today. So I'm assuming that that's the ticket that you're referring to at this point in time. Kurt, I have the Powerball ticket. It's Monday, or actually Tuesday morning. I won the Powerball last night. You're the first phone call I made the next day, Kurt. I have the $1 billion ticket. I'm the only winner. Okay, so there wasn't winners in other states, and I've checked that out. I'll check that out first thing in the morning on Tuesday when I wake up, just to be certain. But then I'm going to want to see something from you in reference to the ticket so that before I spend a lot of time, that I know for a fact that I'm dealing with a winner. Because in the past, in my early years, believe it or not, someone said that they had won. I spent a whole bunch of time putting documents together, contacted the Florida lottery, and was trying to interface with them. And they said, well, Kurt, no one from Merritt Island, Florida won the lottery this last week. Actually, it was won by somewhere else. So again, I would want a picture of the ticket just sent from your phone to my phone so I can verify it and say, great, now we're dealing with the right person. So that's going to be number one. Then number two, after you give me the information about yourself, married, children, how old are the children, where do you live? I'm just going to casually ask you, okay, great. Let's talk about first this lump sum versus annuity. The annuity looks great sometimes. It looks great on paper. But when you actually see numbers, sometimes those numbers change people's minds in many cases.
And with that said, Kurt, by the way, I know the jackpot right now is $1 billion, but really this video and your tips and your advice applies no matter what the jackpot is in terms of the foundation of what you are getting at, what you want our lottery winners to know. But with what you're describing right now, the jackpot is $1 billion. So if somebody wins that, how much are they going to actually get?
Okay, so if they take the annuity, which means they start out taking these payments over 30 years, and at the end of the 30 years, it's over with, they will receive exactly $1.1 billion because that's what the annuity does. However, if they take the cash lump sum amount, that amount is going to be $498 million, basically $500 million cash lump sum, and then you have to pay your taxes on that $500 million. So again, they'll withhold 24% for federal purposes, or about $119, $120 million. Let's say you're in a state where there is a state income tax of 5%. That's going to be another $25 million. And so you'll end up having right now $354 million. But then next April 15th, when you file your tax return, you're going to have to pay another 13% because they only withheld 24%. You're going to owe 37%, which means another 13% will be taxed. So that's going to be another $65 million. And so the net of everything after you pay all your taxes is going to be about $289 million. So it said $1.1 billion, but after taxes, it's going to be $289 million.
Back to the phone call. So we go over my family members. You find out about my family background. I say, hey, I'm thinking about the lump sum. I'm thinking about the annuity. And you're going, slow down, buddy. So what's next after we go over my background and I'm still on the call with you? I go, Kurt, what's next? I'm freaking out.
Well, I'm going to want to do the right thing for the client. And I can't possibly sit here in Indialantic, Florida and know everything that's going on all over the United States. So I don't know what state that you're calling from, but once I find out what that state is, I'm going to tell you, hey, listen, I need about 12 hours between now and tomorrow, so I'll do it right away. But I want to review all the rules and any of the statements from the Lottery Commission from your state, and also looked at your Lottery Act so I could see what I can and can't do. And then, I'm going to tell you, hey, what day is it tomorrow? It's September 1st. And after September, we got October, November, December. Hey, wait, in 3 or 4 months, there's a new year. And, I'm going to ask you, is it really important to claim this right away? We got 6 months to claim it. Should we consider waiting until January to claim it, the 1st of January, to claim the ticket? So that way it's not income in 2025, it's income in 2026, which means I have until 2027 to pay the taxes on it. So I get more time, more deferral of this. No, it's a lot of money. The interest on that alone, the interest on that alone is $2 million, to be quite honest with you. I've done the math on that. And so if that's the case, if the client says, hey, Kurt, what's the fee? And, I give them a number and they say, well, $2 million, that's really the interest of just deferring it.
If I won the lottery, let's assume I'm visiting home in California and I win the $1 billion there, or however much the jackpot is. I go, Kurt, I don't care what state I am, nor do I care about what the anonymity laws of my state are. I want to make sure I stay anonymous. Are you my guy to make this happen?
Well, I will go through fire for the clients and to make sure that we've exhausted every opportunity for them to be anonymous. There's a couple of states that make it very difficult. And in those states, there's possibilities of still doing it. I don't want to say never, but you have to do it through a court proceeding. So you have to go through, a court of equity to try to say, hey, it's the person would be in danger if we had them exposed. And so you have to go through a court procedure through an administrative law judge to get some type of secure net over the information. So I can't say that every state, works easy, but there are a couple states that are difficult. But there's a better than 50-50 chance that you can be successful with that. But it's going to take time. And that's where the issue is for the client, because the client wants this over with. They have dreamt all their life. They said, someday I'm going to win. They talked about it every day for years. And then they win. And all of a sudden, I got to take care of this within 6 hours. I need to know who I'm contacting. I need to know when we can go to Tallahassee, when we can go to, Sacramento, when can we go to the Capitol and claim this ticket? From my perspective, I want to get involved with those clients that want to be anonymous. I want to be involved with those clients that want to be tax efficient with this stuff. Okay. Those are the clients that I want. If it's someone that says, hey, I want to be on the TV show, I want everyone to know who I am because it'd be fun for me. Those are not the clients I want, because I'm concerned about those people. I'm concerned about how they're going to end up, by disclosing that they have all this wealth and people coming to them. I think that that's a concern that for their safety, for their family safety, I want that client that wants to be anonymous. That's who I want to represent. People call me up and they'll say, hey, did you represent that person that won, in this particular state? And I'll say, well, if you know their name, they're probably not my client.
Do you ever get someone who's in the middle of a divorce and they say, I won the lottery and I have no idea what to do? All I know is I don't want my spouse to get any of it.
Sure, it does happen. Unfortunately, that does happen. And I've had people that have contacted me after a major win 6 weeks later or longer. Sometimes you find out that they use the time period to complete their separation from their spouse and or finalize the divorce. And that brings a whole other aspect to this. Now that brings in your state family law into play. So you would want to bring in an expert in that particular state. Like I had someone that contacted me from California, and they said that they were separated from their spouse, completely separated, even though they had kids. They never got together. They never had family dinners or nothing. They completely were their separate ways for 6 months. And the question was, well, if I won during that time period, is it mine or is it ours? And so, again, state laws say as people are separated and they've declared themselves separated, that sometimes in the law, you can be a winner of a lottery and not share it with your spouse that you're not even divorced yet.
I would have to imagine at some point that ends up in some sort of settlement, because the spouse could say, I've been through everything with that person, and I'm going to go on social media and yell at the top of my lungs what they did and who they were if they don't give me something.
Well, that's where I'm going to ask them, hey, yes, you don't stay together. You're in separate households, obviously. But are you living in the household that the spouse owned? So in other words, you had multiple houses and you just haven't sold them yet. So there's some benefit by living in one of the houses, or are you living separately on your own? You also want to say, do you drop off your laundry and have your spouse do the laundry for you? Because, again, that's a tie. When you pick up the kids, do you have family dinners at the house together, or you just pick them up and go your separate ways? So all those little factors come into play in these types of situations. And that's why you want to get a good family law attorney that's a specialist in that area to give you some guidance before you take a position or before you disclose it. Because once it's disclosed, it's the toothpaste out of the tube.
Do you ever have somebody who wins and goes, hey, I have a family member who's about to get married and I want to set aside this amount of money for them, but do I now need to consider having them sign a prenuptial agreement?
Well, I mean, you're obviously, you have to tell them that that's what needs to be done, which means you have to disclose something to them. And there's been some cases where people have won lotteries and the family broke up. And when they broke up, part of the agreement was you can't tell anyone that grandpa won the lottery. That was part of their marital agreement. Well, spouse tells his or her parents, and, the parents are upset that their son or daughter got divorced. And they say it to someone, yeah, the SOB grandfather, won the lottery a long time ago. And, so they're the ones that disclose it, but they never signed it, but they heard it through someone that, over years, everything was fine. And all of a sudden, because of a divorce. So it's difficult. You can do all the non-disclosures you want, but again, it's like the toothpaste coming out of the tube. You can't put it back in once it's out. So you just have to be careful in the process. I've had some clients where, we've talked to family members on the phone about this situation, say, here's the choice. We could either give you this money as part of the ticket, but you have to do you have to do a marital agreement with your spouse, or we have to give it to you after tax with our gift dollars. But if we give it to you with our gift dollars, the gift tax we pay is going to affect what we actually, give you. So it's going to be a lot less.
If a couple wins a couple $100 million, do you recommend a postnuptial agreement while they're already in the thing?
Well, I've had a couple of situations where people had one, and one of the things about money is it allows people to do things that they couldn't do before. Obviously, if there's a couple that's struggling, they may have to rely on each other just because that's the only way they can get through life. And now all of a sudden they win $1 billion, and the bottom line is $300 million net after all taxes. So they could split it up and say, okay, I'm taking 150, you're taking 150. We can go our separate ways. And I've had those situations where we've worked on divorce paperwork, but again, I stepped in on behalf of them because they told me what's going on. I go, okay, listen, let's go through everything and let's divide things up. Who wants the house? What's the house worth? Let's make sure they get a little bit of cash. Let's do this. And when they start arguing about little things, I just say, hold on, that's noise. We don't need to be bringing noise into this conversation. Who gets a particular car is not that big of a deal. Just, get a new car, or something like that. So we have done that. And because I've done a post-marital agreement for them to separate, and then those agreements get incorporated with 2 attorneys that I bring in to handle the representation of each, the husband and the wife, so they can go their separate ways. And we can do it without a lot of fanfare. A couple of people have told me, man, you saved them a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, and a lot of money, because think of what could happen if someone did get married and they went their separate ways, and the husband says, well, my money was used to buy the ticket. And the wife goes, well, I picked the numbers. So who should say, hey, the money's mine? So just split it up and go your separate ways and be comfortable with each other and just not be angry. Try to live your life at this point in time. Enjoy your life, basically.
I don't believe money buys your happiness, but if I won the lottery, I would certainly show up to my problems in a lot of style, because money does actually fix a lot of things. But there is also a hard part about, stepping into overnight wealth. For your clients, what is a common theme? What is the hardest part about winning millions and millions of dollars?
Well, I think, again, what happens with clients is they have this belief and dream that they're going to win. So, I've gotten, last night, I think I got 10 calls in the middle of the night while I was sleeping of people that were contacting me, most of which from the West Coast, because it wasn't 3:00 in the morning in the West Coast. But I get a lot of phone calls on my phone just calling me saying, hey, I'm going to win tonight. And when I do, I'm calling you in the morning, that kind of thing. So people dream. And when they dream, they say, okay, when I win, because it's not if I win, it's when I win, because I know I'm going to win. And so when I win, I'm going to take this 1/3, it's going to be mine. I'm going to enjoy the 1/3. I'm going to take the other 1/3 and I'm going to give it to my friends and my relatives. And I'm going to take the other 1/3 and I'm going to give it to charity. And so, then we're there, we win. They find out that the $1 billion that they thought they were going to get is the $289 million. And that changes their whole perspective of life, going, hey, now it's only $289 million. If I take that and invest that, I can only get $13-14 million, basically tax-free. That's different than what I thought. So since I lost 2/3, I'm only going to give X number of dollars to family members, and I'm going to limit what I do to charities and who those charities are. So it's just, they change. People change when they have this money. There's an old adage that said, money makes people funny. And it's the same thing with the lottery. Everyone changes after they actually win. I have a client that, said, hey, I'm not going to do anything until my account goes over 100 million. So, what's the significance of 100 million? You can't enjoy your life. You can't buy things and do things and travel because you're not over 100 million. It's ridiculous. But people are funny that way. That's just how they are.
That's an interesting notion. Money makes people funny. I guess the real punchline here is the reporter who's been interviewing about the lottery. If he wins, that would be a real kicker, wouldn't it? Kurt, would you give me a discount? I'm completely kidding. You don't have to answer that question, but it gets into a real question here.
Sure.
Depending on the prize dollars, depending on the amount of time you have to put into this, someone on that phone call is going to say, okay, Kurt, this is so exciting. I want to hire you. What do I need to keep in mind for your compensation?
Sure. So, what the client has to realize is when they call me and I tell them, hey, I need to make sure that, number one, you have a winning ticket before I do anything. I don't want to spend any time on this material time until I get that. So they send me the ticket. I confirm that it's a winning ticket. And so then what I have to do is I have to say, okay, I have to look at the state law. So I have to spend, 12 to 15 hours real quick looking at all the lottery acts, the state laws, all the past wins, what issues potentially are there in that particular state. What can I do and what can't I do? So again, a certain state like California where you have to claim it in a group as opposed to a trust or an LLC, I don't need a trust or an LLC. I also know I don't have to pay state income taxes in California. So that affects what I can do and how much time I have to spend. So again, I have to put this all together and say, okay, this is what I can do if the client allows me to do it. So now I got to go back to the client and say, okay, let's talk about the rules. Let's talk about the law. Let's talk about who you want to help. How many people, how many brothers and sisters, how many close friends, are you going to separate from your spouse? That would require a lot more time because I don't want to come back in and start nickel and dime. That's the one thing I hated about the Proxy law is everyone's based on the hourly rate and you get, a bill for hours and doesn't meet your expectations. So everyone's angry. So I like to give the client a fixed fee. So After that first couple of days, I have a pretty good idea what the fee would be based on what I can do and what I can't do. And so then, I'll just reach out to the client and say, here's an agreement. Now understand right now what's going to happen is you're going to be my main client, my main responsibility for September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, basically 8 months, because we got to get you through the tax filing. So yeah, there's going to be a lot going on right now, but afterwards there's always going to be questions and things going on. So I want to do an agreement that says, hey, this is not just for the claim for the next 30 days. This is for the next 8 months. And then after the 8 months, we can agree on, if they still want me involved, that this is what the monthly amount will be. And I'll continue to help them with different things and answer their questions and help them with the process, because I set a lot of things up. So I'm going to give them a fixed fee based on about 8 months of, my primary client, which means, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of like, $50,000 of value a month, basically. So yeah, it could easily be $400,000 or $500,000, for someone winning. But again, I hope that I'm bringing that value to the client so that the client's happy with it, with the anonymity, with, the tax planning and all this stuff, that at the end of the day, they're going to say, well, that was just noise, Kurt. I'll pay you your noise. So,
we're talking about, just what you just said, we're talking about in the largest scheme of things, like without winning the lottery, and you say that figure, that sounds like a lot, but you win tens of millions or hundreds of $1,000s. That's really a fraction of it, really, for the, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And what I also want the client to know is during that time period, okay, after we create this stuff and we claim it and stuff, there's going to be specialists that I'm going to want to bring in. Yeah, I'm going to also tell the client, hey, these are 3 or 4 choices of financial groups that can help you, that I've worked with before, that are good. They will take into consideration your needs over their needs. You see that one commercial on TV all the time about, the guy gets out of the cab and the customer's there and says, oh, Schwab, why did Schwab do this? It's Ralph's Investments versus Schwab, because, they listen to you, they do this. Well, I know who the financial groups are and the banks are that will be very helpful to the client, so that I can get the client to the right people. So I'll do that. I will also make sure that there's going to be some types of specialists that we're going to want to bring in from Delaware or somewhere else that can do asset protection trusts or generation skipping trust, dynasty trust for the family. So I tell the client when I set up this document for them, this fee agreement, that not only is it for Kurt, but it's also for the tax CPA that we're going to bring in, because we're going to have to bring in a group that knows what they're doing in reference to major lottery wins. So we have to get those people in. We have to bring the specialist of the attorneys that I know to come in to do work. So I tell clients, hey, budget about 1% of the amount for these other professionals in my fee. That's really what I tell them. And somehow someone, I think on Reddit, just said, oh, he charges 1% or 2%. No, I don't. What I do is I charge a fixed fee.
Right. And with all that said, you think about winning the lottery, you talk about the emotional toll this takes someone, a great emotional toll, by the way, but then what a headache it would be to have to get all these different pieces, do your own research when you're just trying to think, how do I get my money? And my life is about to change. That is so much. If someone was going to do this a la carte style, that's why I think, in my personal opinion, it's so convenient when someone does this for a living. They know the whole 9 yards. But, Kurt, on the other hand, if someone came to you and said, Kurt, I have a lot of fear. I do want you to be my attorney, but I prefer to keep each of these different individuals separate, where you guys may not know each other, for their own mind. So because we see the comments where people are like, if everybody knows each other, they could go in and steal all my money. As silly as that sounds, maybe, I don't know, maybe some people do deal with that. Would you allow them to say, hey, I know this guy, I have trust with him. Do you two mind talking and meeting each other?
Yeah, I have no problem, working with other professionals. If the client says, hey, I want this person to handle my investments, fine. I'm okay with that. I'll say, I'm concerned about this type of investment plan, but the client has to make that call. I've had that before. I've had attorneys call me and say, hey, our firm doesn't do this, but we have a good client that we're really comfortable with, and we'd like to bring you in to help out. And I go, fine, as long as I'm able to have some say in the shots that are being decided, calling some of the shots. Because I don't want to just be there to be the person that handles the claim. I want to make sure that we're involved, afterwards so that the person can be successful. So, again, I've been brought in by CPAs. I've been brought in by other law firms. And I've even had clients say, this is my buddy. I want him or her to handle all this. Fine. I'll tell them this is what we've done with other winners so that hopefully you can copy that. But, like with investments, that's a big thing. I'm someone that really is partial to clients investing in individual stock positions and bonds and having a portfolio together that's balanced, 60 or 70% equities and 30 or 40% in tax-frees. Some people say, no, I just want annuities. I just want, mutual funds. Well, I know that those things are never really going to amount to anything for the client. They will be secure, but it's never really going to generate any income for the client, and would be probably incorrect from a financial planning standpoint. But if that's what the client wants to do, then it's up to the client.
With that said, we're talking about a jackpot that's over $1 billion now. Have you been getting any sleep? Because you've been taking calls like crazy, but have you been getting any sleep just waiting in case somebody does call you with this win?
No, but what happens is that every morning, like this morning when there was a Saturday night drawing, first thing I do is I get a cup of coffee and I sit down in front of the computer and say, okay, was there a winner last night? Well, I look to see, did the amount change? So it went up to 1.1 billion from $1 billion. I go, okay, obviously no one won. And then I'll look down below and say, okay, well, who won 1 million or 2 million? Where are they from? And I know that those, for the most part, those $1, $2, $3, $5 million wins, those are pretty straightforward wins. I love to help those people. Obviously I have a concern because you can't take 2 or 3 of those and expect to do a job for someone that wins $1 billion that calls you tomorrow, because, just, so you got to be careful with those. But I want to look to see what states they are. If I get a call from one of them, I might take it to help the person out, but I'm really waiting for the person that wins the $1 billion ticket, because I know that that's a better use of my time to help that winner with the process and to help them to be successful. I mean, that's the ideal here, is to be successful. I want to surround them with other professionals that will help them achieve their dreams.
Right. And someone says, hey, Kurt, what's your resume? Besides the millions of dollars of jackpot winners that you have helped represent, you could just easily turn around and point to that check behind you. That is not a decoration. That is the group, the individuals that you represented for that historic $1 billion win just a few years ago. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a group that contacted me the very next morning and told me that they had the winning ticket. And I go, well, that's great. I go, where are you from? And they kind of told me, and that's kind of like the area where the ticket was purchased. And so, I just asked some questions about them, and I said, well, let me, I'm sure I can help you. I know I can do this. I'm comfortable with it. I don't care that there's zeros at the end of the one, but let me take a look at the law, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, hopefully later on tonight. And let's schedule a time to talk at like 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. So they called me in the morning, and by 6 o'clock, I was able to discuss things with them. By the very next day or the day after, we had an engagement letter put together, and I started working on it. And, the problem there was a lot of media attention to that particular big win because it was significant. And of course, the news media up there in the Michigan area had a couple of reporters talking to the person from the Michigan Lottery. And so that individual from the Michigan Lottery said, hey, Michigan law allows for us to tell you who the winner is. There's no anonymity in the state of Michigan, blah, 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 blah. And so I took that and said, well, that's not a good fact. So let me see what actually the law says. And I went in and looked at it and said, well, this is one way of doing it to be in compliance. So, I put it together, and I have a couple of mentors too. I can't say that this is all just me. From time to time, I have some law school professors that I can reach out to, that I have a good relationship with, and talk to them in an anonymous setting and say, I have a client who does this, and I've learned this from people that would call me up in the early days when I was an estate planning attorney. They would yodel to me. They would say, Kurt, I have a lady who, and so, so I do the same thing with some of these law school professors. I'll call them up and say, hey, I have a gentleman who does this, or I have a lady who. And so, I can ask them some questions about some legal theories and get their input on it, and then put something together, which is what I did in Michigan. And again, it went in front of the Attorney General's office there, who basically said, well, he's complying, so we have to do it because he's complying, even though, the Michigan Lottery didn't like it at the time. And now I've opened up a Pandora's box up there in Michigan for people that want to be anonymous. So what's Michigan now doing? Well, now they're saying, okay, well, since we're creating this scenario that Kurt created by how he claimed that big ticket, let's just make it easier for everyone to claim it anonymously. So Michigan's even changing their laws.
Last time I interviewed you, you said that when the jackpots get to an astronomical number, sometimes you might play for fun. Did you buy a couple quick picks or personal number tickets?
Oh, on the way home from the golf course today, I stopped and got a couple of soft drinks. And while I was at the counter, I go, hey, I don't know what's going to happen next Monday, but it's only a day away. Go ahead and give me a ticket. So if I don't get out tomorrow because I'm barbecuing, I'll be fine. So I got mine for tomorrow. Although, I got to tell you, I've already gotten some calls from people already that says they're winning tomorrow. So no one should buy any tickets because there's people that already said they're going to win because they've already called me.
What's your favorite Powerball number?
I think when I've done it before, it's always been the number 9 for some reason.
Me too.
I think
9 or 19. Okay, so 9 for you.
For me, I grew up in Chicago, and Channel 9 was my favorite channel on TV, WGN, because that's where you watched all the Cub games, and so I would watch my Cub games on Channel 9, and ever since then, it happened to be my first Little League number, so I've always liked it, and it's always been a favorite.
Would you represent yourself?
I'd probably go out and find the best lottery lawyer I know, so probably yes. But this is the one time I would give him a break on the fee.
Oh, that's awesome.
But you've talked about that. It's kind of funny because I've told people in the past that if I ever did win, no one would really know because I could say I'm doing it for someone else. So it's the perfect storm.
Absolutely. Kurt, with all that said, do most of your clients win off of the quick pick or their personal numbers?
I think most of the winners that I've had have likely been, I would say, more quick picks than anything else. Just the luck of the draw, basically. But they're, I'm going to say 70% quick picks as opposed to picking their numbers.
Kurt, you and I have seen so many lottery winners on social media who said they either dreamt the numbers or they heard a voice or something mystical happened. I don't know how much I lean into that, but do your clients have any of these mystical experiences or is it just all luck?
Well, the ones that call me in advance that tell me that they're winning that night or the next day, they all have some type of calling of some sort that says they're going to win or these are their numbers. I even have people that will send me a picture of their ticket the night before the drawing. Like last night, I had someone that sent me a picture. I think it was at 10 o'clock at night. I forgot where they were from, but they sent me their Powerball ticket in advance and just said, I'll be calling you in the morning. And I think that's because I'm so available to people because I put my lotterylawyer.cpa.com out there, Kurt at lotterylawyer.cpa.com, or call me at 321-676-3733. Because that's out there, people just take advantage of it and send me this stuff. And, half the time I'll call them back, but something like that I won't call. I'll just text back and say, well, good luck. Hope to hear from you. And just, and just be the nice person to send that back to them like that. But, all the time I get that. So, but I would say most people win with quick picks for the most part.
Okay. Kurt, thank you so much for your time. Really invaluable advice. And you know what? Hopefully the next time I call you, it is asking for your representation because I won the lottery.
Well, good luck to you. And also good luck to your viewers out there as well.
Okay. Appreciate you, Kurt. Take care.